So in the last section, we were looking at writing percents as decimals. And so now we're going to do the opposite. We're going to write decimals as percent. So what you want to do to make something into a percent is to multiply the decimal by 100. So you're going to move the decimal place 2 over to the right, and then you're going to put on the percent sign. So for example, 0.18, we would move our decimal place over 2 to the right, and that would become 18%. 0.03 then is going to become 3%. 1.25 is going to become 125%. Okay, so why don't you pause this video and try these next 6 questions. All right, so hopefully you had a chance to do these ones on your own. So 2.25, we're going to multiply by 100. In other words, move that decimal place 2 over to the right, and that will give us 225%. 0.032, our decimal place is going to land here, so that's going to become 3.2%. And this next one, if we move the decimal place 2 over, whoops, we're going to get 0.6%. Okay, 0.27 then, we're going to get 27%. Careful with this 1.3, we've got to move that decimal place 2 over to the right. So we're going to have to add a 0 there. So that's going to become 130%. Anytime you have a number greater than 1, it's going to be over 100%. And this last 1.05 then would become 5%. Okay, moving on to writing fractions as percent. So this is similar. We've already done this where we've used proportions. So if you have something like a fraction like here, we've got 3 over 5. Remember, we can think of that as an equivalent fraction over 100. That will give us the percentage. So here they've done the cross product. So 5 times x equals 3 times 100. And then so we end up with this line 5x equals 300. And we're going to divide both sides by 5 because we know those 5s will cancel out, leaving with x equals 60%. The other way you can do this is you can use division. So on your calculator, you could go 3 divided by 5, or using long division, I suppose. If you do 3 divided by 5, you're going to get 0.6. So now you've got a decimal answer, and you can do what we just did above. So we're going to move that over 2 to the right by multiplying by 100, and we get 60%. Okay, so let's write these fractions as percents. So if I've got 1 over 2 then, so I'm going to go to my calculator and go 1 divided by 2. That gives me 0.5. So my decimal answer here is 0.5 or 5/10. Now I'm going to move my decimal place over 2 to the right to get a percent. So this is the same as 50%. And that makes sense because you may already know that 1/2 of something is also 50% of something. Okay, 1/4 then. So let's do that on our calculators. And we get 0.25. And so if we move that over 2 to the right, we'll have 25%. So go ahead, pause this video and try those next 2 on your own. Okay, moving on to C. So I'm going to do 1 divided by 8 on my calculator, and I get 0.125, or more correctly, I guess I should say 125 thousandths. So I'm going to move my decimal place 2 over to the right to convert that to a percent, and I get 12.5%. And then 5 over 6, so 5 divided by 6, so I get 0.83. I'm going to put a bar there to indicate the 3 goes on forever. So it's 0.833333 forever. And so if I convert that then to a percent, that's going to be 83, or I could do 83.3%. Okay, let's take a look at a word problem. So we have 3 cylinders that aren't firing properly in an 8-cylinder engine. We want to know what percent of the cylinders are firing properly. So we know 3 cylinders are not firing properly. So that means how many are left? Well, we have 8. 3 aren't firing properly, so we have 5 cylinders firing properly. So we're looking for the percentage firing properly, so that's going to be 5 out of our total of 8. That would be our fraction. And so now we're going to convert that to a percent. So 5 divided by 8 on my calculator gives me 0.625. Move that decimal place over 2 to the right to convert to a percentage, and we get 62.5% are firing properly. And what if they had asked you for the percent that are not firing properly? Well, you could do 3 divided by 8 and do the same thing I just did here. Or if you already know the answer here, we know 62.5% are firing properly. There's 100% in all. So that means we're going to have 100 minus 62.5. So your answer in that case would be 37.5 are not firing properly. Okay, let's get into some examples where they've got mixed numbers. So if they have a mixed number and they want you to convert it to a percent, write that mixed number as an improper fraction. And then you can do what we've been doing above, where you multiply by 100% or shift that decimal place over 2 to the right. So for example, if we've got 1 1/4, and the improper fraction would be 5 over 4, we can punch that into our calculator to get 1.25. And then when we convert it to a percent, our decimal is going to go 2 over to the right. So it's going to become 125%. So I've got 2 3/4. So step 1, let's write that as an improper fraction. So go ahead and write that as an improper fraction. And you should get 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 is going to give us 11. So 11 over 4. So let's figure out the decimal answer for 11 over 4. So 11 divided by 4 on my calculator gives me 2.75. Now we've got a decimal answer. Let's convert to a percent. And we get 275%. All right, pause this video and try the next one. Okay, let's try this next one together. So step 1, we're going to convert this to an improper fraction, which would give us 17 over 12. Now let's get our decimal answer by typing that into our calculator. So 17 divided by 12 gives me 1.4. I'm going to round this to 1.42. Okay, we can move our decimal over 2 to convert to a percent. And that's going to give me 142%. And that's my final answer there. Okay, last question. Take a look at this word problem. Okay, so we have Emma's computer has a hard drive which has a 74.5 gig capacity. And right now she's using 10.8 gigs. We want to know what percent Emma is using. So we know she's using 10.8 gigs out of 74.5 gigs. So our units are going to cancel here. So we're looking for the percentage. So what percentage of 74.5 is 10.8? So we're looking for 10.8 over 74.5. So let's start by converting that to a decimal by using our calculators. So 10.8 divided by 74.5, and I get 0.14. I'm going to round to the thousandth here. So 0.145. Now we want to convert that to a percent. So that's going to be 14.5%. So Emma is using 14.5% of her hard drive. And let's take a step back and just look at this and see if that is reasonable. So she's using about 10 gigs of around just under 100. So it's going to be 10 out of 100 would be 10%. We're looking at a little more because we're out of about 75. So yeah, that seems like a reasonable answer.